Okay, so I was going to do a writing room on subtlety in writing, but a friend of mine on Discord reached out to me with this, and honestly, I feel more like addressing this right now. I'll leave his name off of here for privacy's sake, but you know who you are, so thanks for sharing this with me. You asked a really good question. So, my fan in his question asked me this, quote, "Do you think it's good storytelling to drag out a fight between a character and an enemy that they can pretty much defeat with ease just to show the strife and conflict between the two characters?" Alright, so let me try to rephrase the question another way. Is it ever okay to draw out a fight scene that should have a swift conclusion so that you can explore character conflict and drama? This is an excellent question because it touches on a major aspect of storytelling that many writers, I feel, forget. What is a story fundamentally? What are you trying to do with the stories you tell? You want to, in essence, convince your audience to care about the characters in your story. Your goal is to make your reader or viewer or player give a damn about your characters and their struggles, relationships, goals, and battles. And in order to do this, you must convince your reader that these characters, to some capacity, are real. Their life becomes real to your reader. For that brief period that your audience dives into the story that you created, then they are being taken into a whole new world where these characters aren't just words on a page or actors on a screen, but real. Real individuals with real struggles and pain, real love and devotion, and real laughs and real tears. Remember this and remember this well. If you don't learn anything else from this video or by writing rooms in general, this is something you need to remember. If you cannot convince your audience that these characters are real, you have failed as a storyteller. Now, obviously, no one is going to read a Batman comic and believe Batman is a real person, but for the brief period in which you're reading the Batman comic, Batman is real to you. For the short 30 minutes of a Naruto episode, Naruto is real to somebody. Not that they're a tangible person in our world, but they are people we connect to, feel for, care about. That's what I mean. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Raven, you haven't answered the above question. When are you going to answer the question? Patience? I'm getting there. Now let's create the scenario from the question. Warrior A and Warrior B are about to fight. Warrior A is far stronger than Warrior B and should defeat him quite easily. However, the author has chosen to drag out the scene. Why? Because he wants to push the drama, conflict, and strife that's going on between Warrior A and B. Now, in theory, this is good. Anime in particular loves drawing out fights to encourage character development, discussion, and growth. Naruto and One Piece do this a lot, actually. So, in theory, this is a good idea. But in practice, you are taking a risk. If Warrior A is stronger than Warrior B, the question is not, can Warrior A beat B easily? That's irrelevant. We know the answer. We know that he can. The question instead is, does it make sense if Warrior A beats B easily? Is it consistent with these characters and their goals? Does it meet with their motivations, personalities, and histories? Does it coincide with who they are and what we know about them? For example, when Vegeta first met Goku in Dragon Ball Z, it was pretty clear Vegeta could have easily won, but he was arrogant, full of pride, unwilling to use his full power against who he saw as an inferior opponent. His arrogance is what drew out the fight.
Aha! Well done. You dodged it. Of course I made that one easy. After all, it wouldn't be any fun if you died right away.
That matches with Vegeta's character and who he is. It makes sense that his ego would be his undoing. It's his Achilles heel after all. It wasn't a matter of strength. If it were just down to, hey, can Warrior A beat B? Yes, of course Vegeta can beat Goku. That's not a question at this point in time. But the question is, does it make sense if Vegeta just straight up kills Goku? Well, not if we know what we do about Vegeta, that Vegeta is an arrogant blowhard who loves to show off how much stronger he is by dragging out the fight to make his opponent suffer.
Are you done already? I guess you're all talk then, huh? In that case, allow me to show you something before you die. The overwhelming power of a Saiyan Super Elite.
He likes to make his opponent wallow in defeat. Alucard does the same thing in Hellsing. Alucard is a supremely powerful vampire, the most powerful vampire of them all. He does a lot of battles the same way. He'll go in and let his opponent destroy him. He'll let his opponent get out a bunch of damage on him so that they think, haha, I killed you.
Is that the best you've got?
Only to regenerate, get back up, and say, no fam, not the case, and then waste them. Why? Because Alucard also is arrogant. He recognizes I'm better than you. I'm going to play with my food. I'm going to play with the people who I see as inferior to me. I want you to think you've won. I want you to get that brief moment of, haha, I could win, only for me to trash it.
You don't know how to change your body into mist or a bat. You can't heal any of your gunshot wounds. And now that you're out of bullets, you can't even defend yourself. You dare to call yourself Nosferatu? You disgust me.
You know, that's kind of the sentiment. And when you understand that aspect of the character, then you understand why they make the choice to drag out a fight. We know that Alucard could waste whatever he's up against. We know that Vegeta could waste Goku at the point in time they first met. But it is not about what they're capable of, it's about why it makes sense whether or not they would. But, okay, those are easy ones, and they don't necessarily add strife or meaning to anything. What about when there's weight to it? Here's an example. Saitama versus Boros. In One Punch Man, Saitama is a man with so much power, he kills every monster he fights with a single punch. He meets an alien warrior named Boros, who has come to Earth because he's bored of winning every fight with ease and wants a true challenge. And when Saitama punches him, it doesn't kill Boros. Saitama and Boros fight in a duel that defies logic, but in the end, Saitama wins. And Boros laments that Saitama had been holding back the whole time. Boros was never even a challenge.
You were holding back, weren't you? I never stood a chance. It wasn't even a battle. You obliterated me. You were just too strong.
Why does this make sense? Why doesn't Saitama just go all out and kill him, like right away? Why doesn't he use his full power to just waste Boros? Why did we need that long action fight scene? Obviously, people are going to say, oh, because it was such a cool action scene. But as I've said before, cool factor is good, but it needs to make sense. Does it make sense? It does when you understand that Saitama is seeking the same thing Boros is. The thrill of a real fight, the sensation of combat, the thrill of battle. But because they both were so strong, they lost that feeling. Saitama pitied Boros and gave him what he wanted by holding back just enough to let Boros enjoy himself. It's not only understandable, it hurts. It makes you sad to see it because Saitama is denied the very thing he gave Boros, denied that feeling that he craves of a true challenge. Why did we feel bad for Saitama? Why is this ending where we see Boros lamenting his own weakness, lamenting how strong Saitama is, realizing that Saitama was holding back the whole time? Why do we feel so sad about this? Because we connect to Saitama. He feels real to us. We understand the pain he's going through, what sacrifice he had to make here. Saitama looked at Boros and thought, you're just not at my level, but because I know what you're going through, I'm going to give you what you're looking for because it's the thing I can't have. The ending of One Punch Man's anime, at least the first season, is bittersweet and a little sad. And it was done through a fight that didn't need to take as long as it did. But it was for the sake of conflict and the characters. Now I know what you're thinking. Can you think of a situation where this doesn't work? Yes. In the movie Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff squares off with Taskmaster, kind of, if you want to call him that. In this fight, it's obvious that Taskmaster has the upper hand. Their suit, even registering Natasha as only a percentile of a threat. They even seem disinterested in her during most of the fight. He uses an RPG, a Captain America shield, and an ability to replicate Natasha's moves back at her, the whole 9 yards. However, it's revealed later that Tasky had a gun.
Come home. No. Don't go breaking my new toy.
And during the fight, they are revealed to carry a knife. But none of these are ever used in this first fight. Why were none of these ever used in the first fight? It's later made clear that Tasky was a victim of Natasha's own cruelty in the past and wants revenge. It would have made sense to treat her as a threat and kill her without remorse, especially if they hate Natasha for what they did, but this doesn't happen, and the tools used to complete the task are not ever utilized. And you can't argue that it's because Taskmaster wanted her alive. I mean, Tasky fired a freaking RPG at Natasha's car, for God's sake. A normal person would be dead. And there are the times he continuously tries to kill her. Even if you want to say Tasky wasn't far superior to Natasha in battle skill, at the very least we can expect and understand that Tasky was neutered to facilitate Natasha's survival. But does it make sense for this to happen? Not given what we know and learn. The difference between this one and the Saitama one is that in this, we understand that Tasky has no real reason to hold back with Natasha, and yet it's clear that he was nerfed for the fight. He doesn't use a gun when he moves in on Natasha. He doesn't engage Natasha directly for a lot of the fight, straight up ignoring her. But we see later that he desperately wants to kill Natasha because of a past action. It doesn't make sense for this fight to be dragged on. It doesn't make sense for Natasha to be alive. None of this adds up. And there's no character explanation. If the creator of the movie wanted to say, oh, it's drawing out to explain the conflict between the two. We don't get much of that here anyway, so you're having to tell us something that is not relevant, or is not present at the very least. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm using this overall discussion to launch into a greater point that needs to be made, and that is the key to story writing. Telling a story is not just about creating drama, strife, and conflict. It's about convincing your reader that these characters are real and that their exploits and actions come from an area of logic from their point of view. The drama and strife and conflict can then arise from these real characters and their exploits and actions. Here's an example that Mahler made in one of his videos that really hit the point home. Do you believe that Thanos' plan makes sense in Infinity War? Well, that question is irrelevant to the even larger question. Does Thanos believe his plan makes sense? Does it logically add up to Thanos even if we recognize the flaws in it? The characters' goals, desires, personalities, and interests have to be consistent to them. This will make them feel more real to the audience. They will become more engrossed in their trials, their struggles, and their actions. The audience will believe in what they're trying to do, even if they don't necessarily agree with it. We will look at it and at least go, yes, this makes sense to their character. In fact, one of the things that I didn't like about Heath Ledger's Joker in the Dark Knight movies is while I saw Heath Ledger's Joker as an intimidating, frightening, and scary villain, he didn't come off as the Joker to me.
They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
The whole idea that Heath Ledger's Joker is trying to send a message, that he has an overall purpose or goal in mind, that he has some kind of meaning to what he does, goes in contrast to everything I know about the Joker and his other iterations. Most of the time when I think of the Joker, I think of a complete madman who has no reason or rhyme behind anything he does. He'll just blow up a city block because, well, it's Tuesday and he felt like it. He'll hire on new henchmen one day, but then the very next day he'll dip them in acid. Why? It's funnier that way. The Joker doesn't have a rhyme or reason to anything he does, but Heath Ledger's Joker is more, meaningful. He has a goal. He's actually trying to prove something. He's trying to accomplish something at the end of the day. And to me, that didn't feel like Joker. An intimidating villain, a very good villain, an enemy for Batman to fight, but it didn't feel like the Joker that I had always known.
I now do what other people only dream. I make art until someone dies. See? I am the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist.
Now, when a fight scene takes place in which one side is the obvious powerhouse, going back to the original question, if you intend to extend the drama between the two by extending the conflict, that's fine, but a strong writer will do it in a way that fits with the character's personalities, goals, and desires. Another great example that I can think of that works very, very well is Luffy versus Usopp in One Piece. In the Water 7 arc of One Piece, Luffy's crew finds out that their ship, the Going Merry, is damaged beyond repair and is destined to sink. Luffy plans to buy a new ship, but Usopp, one of the crewmen and a close friend of Luffy, sees this as Luffy abandoning their friend in need. He refuses to give up on the Merry despite his captain's decisions. The two argue, it turns violent, and in a fit of rage, Luffy tells Usopp that if he doesn't agree with his captain's decisions, he might as well leave.
Dude, listen to yourself! Luffy! Don't act like you're the only one who's torn up about this! We all feel the same way!
If that was true, then you wouldn't be looking for a new ship!
Alright, fine! If you don't like the way your captain does things, then why don't you go ahead and get up?
And though Luffy regrets his words, Usopp agrees, saying he can't keep up with Luffy anymore and will leave the crew.
Wherever I go, it's my business. It has nothing to do with you anymore. I'm leaving the crew. This is goodbye.
But before he leaves, he wants one final duel with Luffy, and the winner can keep the Mary.
I'll be back, so you better be ready for a fight, Captain. I can't stop you from destroying your own ship, but if I win, I'm taking the Mary and leaving. Either way, when we're done, the last bond between us will be broken.
Now, Luffy is not only the captain of the crew, but the strongest member of the crew. Gifted with unnatural resilience and a superpower that makes his body rubbery and stretchy, Luffy is a powerhouse. Usopp, meanwhile, is considered the weakest of the crew besides Nami, who relies on deception, long-range sniper fire, and trickery to even escape danger, let alone win a fight. It's obvious from the beginning who will win, and no one makes any secrets about it. Usopp does fight cleverly using tactics that hurt Luffy and hold him off briefly, but in the end, Luffy defeats Usopp after landing only 2 punches. Now, why did Luffy, who's easily defeated far stronger characters, let this fight drag out the way he did? Because Usopp and Luffy were friends.
You idiot. You knew it would end like this. You knew you could never beat me!
This wasn't just a fight over the Mary. This was a fight that was cutting their bonds. Luffy found it hard to fight seriously against Usopp. Hard to bring himself to do this. He didn't want to do this. It makes sense for this fight to drag out because neither character wants the fight in the first place. No one watching this fight has to wonder why it's dragging on. We know why. Because we know these characters. We believe their struggle and their pain. We understand that Luffy, despite being light years ahead of Usopp in terms of battle capability and strength, doesn't want to fight Usopp seriously because deep down he still cares about him.
You know as well as me that after tonight, we can never return to this ship again.
In a poorly written story, this would make no sense. We'd not understand why it took Luffy so long. Oda would have had to tell us, I'm doing this to extend drama and meaning to the characters. The moment you as an author have to explain your actions and character decisions, you've failed as a writer. That's why the Korra and Asami moment at the end of Legend of Korra took so many people by surprise, and Mike and Brian had to actually go on interviews and article writings to announce what they did. The community was still skeptical. They didn't know it was a romantic moment or a friendship moment because the story had done little to establish these two as a couple or to insinuate that this was the intention overall. This is what's called poor writing. When you do so little to establish a character's goals or interests that your audience can't know for sure what they've seen until the writer has to lay it out for you. In that scene where Korra and Asami hold hands, lots of people were going, oh, are they a couple or are they just friends? No one knew for sure. Mike and Brian had to tell us. The writer shouldn't have to tell you. The characters should be fleshed out enough that you understand what you're seeing and go, this feels like the logical conclusion for these two characters. And before you say, no, they did drop hints, I would like to remind you, several people after the scene came out were baffled. Yes, many were happy because they wanted to see this in the first place and just drew 2 and 2 together, but others were baffled and went, I don't know, maybe they're just friends. Maybe this is just something that we don't understand. But no, Mike and Brian had to come out and clear the air and say, yes, this was our plan. And that alone made me go, well, then you did a very, very poor job of explaining that, and that's not good storytelling. But even outside of fight or action scenes, sometimes character personalities can help to explain scenes or decisions made. For example, I used the Usopp versus Luffy fight, but let's talk about the aftermath of that. After the events of Water 7 and Enies Lobby, the crew is getting a new ship and preparing to sail away, but they learn that Usopp wants to come back to the crew. Luffy, Chopper, and Nami are excited for this news, but Zoro has a problem.
Okay, let's go get him right now!
Well, that's Usopp for you. Should have known.
We're gonna get our crew back!
All of you, hold on a second.
He points out that he won't accept Usopp until he apologizes for his actions and for his disrespect.
You can't kiss his ass and tell him you're happy to see him again. You know that.
Zoro?
Until he bows his head and apologizes for what he did, he can't come back.
You big hey! I don't know what your problem is, but
Shut up!
Nami and Chopper don't understand Zoro's position, but I understood it the minute he said it, because I know Zoro. Zoro is a man who builds his whole life around honor, respect, and duty. He devoted his life to his captain and to his pride. He detests cowardice and weakness, and he admires Luffy for his convictions and his strength, both physically and morally. The thought that Luffy would just so carelessly accept Usopp back, pretending like nothing ever happened, it's insulting. It shows weakness. It makes Luffy out to be a pushover, and Zoro won't stand for it. He has too much respect for himself and too much for Luffy.
You understand, don't you? He may be an idiot, but this guy is still our captain. We're better off without a crew member who doesn't respect their leader when things get rough. A crew with no respect and a captain that doesn't demand it are destined to fall apart quickly.
Zoro makes it clear that Luffy is still their captain and he is owed their respect. And if they can't trust Usopp when times get tough, how can we trust him going forward?
Don't get me wrong, it's fine if he joins the crew again, and it's fine if you want him back. But if he doesn't apologize for what he did and pretends like nothing ever happened between the two of you, then I won't forgive him and I won't stand for it.
What's even more surprising, not only this, is that someone who agrees with him is Sanji.
So the fact that he left our crew means nothing? He can come and go as he pleases?
No. But
Nami, I hate to admit it, but just this once at least, I have to agree with what he's saying.
Sanji and Zoro have a rivalry that goes back as far as their first meeting, always at each other's throats and picking fights and disagreeing with each other. But here Sanji agrees, for he too upholds a very similar standard of honor, meaning he knows Zoro is right on this one. Oda doesn't have to stop the program and explain, oh, look, here's why Zoro says this and here's why Sanji agrees. We already know why, because we believe in these characters and who they are. They are fleshed out and dynamic enough that we understand where they're going, what they're planning, what they feel, and thus when this information is shown to us, we understand why they make it. You want to know how you can tell if a character's written well? That you could take them out of their environment and put them in a new environment and know how they'd react, know how they'd feel, know how they'd approach it. That's one of the beautiful things about One Piece. Because each island they go to is so vastly different, we get to see how these characters interact and react to new stimuli. This is creative because it allows us to see what these characters are in a very, very wonderful way. Sorry, I think my overall point should be clear by now, but just in case, because I know I've gone off on a few tangents, let me restate it plainly. The art of storytelling is meant to convince your audience that these characters are real. Good storytelling can bring a world and its figures to life, just in such a way that even when you leave the theater, put down the book, or switch off the TV, you're still thinking about what you saw and pondering just what will happen to these characters down the line. Or perhaps how things might have been different for them. Or lamenting or praising character choices and actions, even though they have no bearing on your life or real-world experiences. But bad storytelling can leave you uncertain why certain things happen. Leave you scratching your head wondering why these characters did what they did, why certain scenes played out in the manners they did, and why you should even care about them in the first place. You'll walk away only with the memory of confusion and anger, wishing you'd not only wasted your time on this art itself, but why you even bothered being invested. And worse than that, you may find yourself forgetting all you saw because you couldn't even be made to care long enough to consider the piece bad. Just words on a page or actions on a screen. Do you want your fight scene to be longer than necessary for character drama and strife? Sure, that's fine, go for it, but only if that decision enriches the reality of the story of your audience. See, the question being asked is, can a fight be written this way? That's not the question. The question you should be asking is, do these characters have the fleshed out personalities, interests, goals, and aspects and outlooks to the point that it would make sense to have this fight in the first place, and whether or not it would be drawn out at all, whether it would be necessary at all. There are plenty of cases of strong characters going up against weaker characters, and sometimes the fights can be drawn out. But in the cases where they are, the question has to be asked, does it make sense for these characters to draw out this fight? Absolutely, it can. It absolutely can. But only if you let the characters show you why. If the writer has to break the story and say, look, here's why, there's a problem. My friend who was telling me about this told me that he was talking to his buddy, and his buddy and he asked his buddy, why did you write these two characters to fight like this? And he responded, because it's called good storytelling. I was fleshing out the drama and the strife between the two characters. And my response to that is, if that's true, why did that have to be asked? Why did the why even have to be asked? It should have been obvious from the reading. That's the point. It's not always about getting the really cool action scenes. It's not about getting the long, drawn-out fight. It's bringing out the characters. Fights, combat, romance, horror, tension, these can all be used in storytelling to make your characters feel alive, because we want to see how these characters react to the stimuli. Why is this going to impact a character differently than this character? Why is this fight going to be different for this character than this character? Why is this moment of passion going to be more meaningful for party A than party B? Why? Why is the question? Why is the piece that will allow you to draw out wonderful stories? And it is a writer's job to answer that question, not physically in an outside interview, but through the character dialogue, through the character's actions, through the character's behavior, through the character's wants, desires, and needs. That is the art of good storytelling. Not the best fight scenes, not the best kissing, not the best horror, not the best tension, not the best gunplay. But creating characters that you will believe are real for the brief time you spend with them. Whew, I think I went a little off on that one, but that's why I wanted to talk about it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.